Blessed Ash Wednesday to all. I have my ashes, my co-host does not, so we're going to pray that he gets those, returns to the church later today. I'm just joking. John, Michael Hichborn, Catholic champion. We're talking history of Zionism and a few other things, including the fact that Mark Levin, who has one of the largest radio programs in the country, went after Catholics for Catholics 2 days ago. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. Unless, Michael, you already have gotten your ashes, but you wiped it off on accident or something like that. You don't have to share, but...
No, I've been too busy preparing for the program.
There you go. That's good. That's a good answer. So, but yeah, it is Ash Wednesday, start of Lent. It's a day of graces, day. It's not the start of Ramadan. That's the Ramadan is a copy of the Catholic tradition of Lent, right? I wish we would remember that more often, but Lent begins today for Catholics around the entire world. It's a day of grace, day of preparation for the Passover of the Lord. As we get into this, just speaking of wiped off ashes, let's revisit a video which was circling around yesterday. Yes, it's from 2019. Okay, it's 6 years old, but it's still good. And it also just reminds me, just a few years ago, what was happening. Not that it's gotten better necessarily with anti-Catholic bigotry in this country, but check out this clip here from this kid. You probably saw it. His ashes were wiped off. Let's play the clip.
Teacher walked over and said, like, what is that? And I was like, it's Ash Wednesday and I'm Catholic for Lent. And he's like, no, it's inappropriate. Go take it off.
His attempt to explain the meaning of the symbol fell on deaf ears.
And she took me aside and she said, you have to take it off. So she gave me a de-infection wipe, whatever they're called, and she made me wipe it off.
William says it happened as many of his classmates watched.
They saw a teacher wipe it off because they wiped it off in front of all my friends. I felt like really bad.
The school's principal called William's grandmother as soon as she learned of the incident.
I was pretty upset.
The teacher also called.
And I asked her if she read the Constitution of the First Amendment, and she said no and oh.
The Davis School District says what happened is not acceptable.
Why that even came up, I have no idea.
It wants students of all faiths to feel welcomed.
When a student comes into school with ashes on the forehead, it's not something that we say, please take off.
Apparently there's good news because the teacher who wiped the ashes off the kid's forehead later claimed that she didn't know they were, she thought it was just dirt. Okay. Of course the kid
That's
said.
what she claimed, but I thought the little boy just explained that he explained the religious significance of the...
Or maybe it was religious significance of dirt, and so she still thought it was okay. I don't know, but you know what? I'm not buying it. But good for the kid. Good for the kid. Right. He's gonna always remember that happened to him, and it's gonna. I guarantee you, whatever it is, 6 years later, he's probably much stronger in his Catholic faith now for having an attack. Right?
Sure, absolutely.
It is Ash Wednesday. We go out. I was actually this is my last story. We'll get into the topic. Okay, a topic at hand, which is the history of Zionism, which is so once again in the news. Okay, running out to the grocery store, and I actually have a few friends there. I mean like people. I really try to be nice to every single person I see at the grocery store there, and just especially one of the cash register, and a few of them are of the opposite. They have leanings towards the same sex. Let's just say that, right? But I always try to be friendly with them, talking up. They know I'm Catholic. They see me with, with my family did so. But there's one individual who's, all tatted up, earrings, everything like that. And he's not Catholic or not even probably religious, right? But we've always been cordial. Sees my ashes, and he's like, oh, Ash Wednesday. I'm like, yeah, Ash Wednesday. So I'm like, well, great. What do I say now? Like, what do I talk about? So we talked about death, and I said, yeah. I said, do you know Mr. I won't say the guy's name because he's always Sam, whatever. Sam, do you know what they say? The priest says when you put ashes on your forehead. He's like, no. What do they say? And I got people behind me. It's like they say, man, you are dust, and dust you shall return. He's like, whoa, whoa, okay. And I said, yeah, it's, it's a good time to think. It's like, he said, well, yeah, we should be thinking more about our mortality. I'm like, absolutely. Right. So,
Yep.
and then the last thing I told him, I told him about the bone. You've been to the bone church in Rome, Michael? Famous.
I've never been. I have seen pictures of it, but I've never been.
Totally recommended. People always ask me, I lived in Rome for 5 years. What do I see? Add this to your list. Store this. Remember this. Besides seeing the 4 major basilicas, seeing the catacombs, go to the Church of the Bones. Church of the Bones, crypt of a church, and inside, former convict in the 1800s, basically went there for refuge. He had a lot of free time, so what did he do? He turned the crypt of the downstairs church. Franciscan was a Franciscan church. He took all the bones of the Capuchins, the bones from the cemetery, the Capuchins. I think those were killed during the French Revolution, if I remember.
Ooh, okay.
The bones, and he arranged them in different like cubicles, like a rooms by like 12 by 12. And the most famous one, of course, is at the end where it's like a bunch of skulls like looking at you, and has a famous phrase: "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you once will be." Right. So I told this to Sam at the cash register, who has same-sex attractions. Okay. And but he had positive receptivity. I mean, at the end of the day, look, we all know we're going to die, and this is what Ash Wednesday is about. We got to be evangelizing, going about, be proud we're Catholic, and talk about this to the world. All right, that's my Ash Wednesday story. I'm assuming you have none so far, right, Michael? Because you haven't been ashed up yet.
I haven't even been outside my house.
Next champion show next week, Micah will be talking to us about his ashes. Okay, so we're gonna hold you to that. Okay, so I want to hear an evangelization story. History of Zionism. Okay, why are we talking about this again? Because
It's my favorite topic. That's why.
It seems like it's the media. It seems like it, and also for what it's worth, the entire younger generation of voters, a lot of the older ones, dare I say, boomers out there, older than whatever, 45 and above. I'm 41, so I'm going to put myself above that, underneath that. They tend towards a different direction on how the America should seize Israel. They just have a natural tendency, and you understand it because they've kind of grown up in this environment. The younger generations, a lot of it was because Charlie Kirk and others they've completely flipped on this idea of looking towards Israel. And there's a kind of a battle going on between these two groups, right? Age groups. I see it very much. So it's a hot issue among younger generation voters. And, and I think it's good that it gets attention. So here we are, Catholic champion, Catholic for Catholic, trying to give a Catholic perspective for a theological problem in root with very severe, important political consequences, depending on where you start theologically. Okay. Politics is always downstream from faith, and here's a great example of that. So Zionism, and we're going to get into the fireworks at the end, where this kind of exploded again on the national stage at the Religious Liberty Commission when Carrie Prejean Bowler, former Miss California, now a friend of mine, was removed off the Religious Liberty Commission, or it's removed, or not sure if she's removed yet. It's kind of in limbo. Because of what really kind of amounted to her buckling down on a Catholic stance of how the church sees the political 1948 state of Israel. Dan Patrick removed her. So fireworks at the end, because you're going to hear the update on that, how we're giving her a award, and how Mark Levin, famous Mark Levin, has a massive radio program, went after Catholics for Catholics 2 days ago. Okay, so, but before the fireworks, let's get into the history of Zionism, okay? What is it? How does the Catholic Church see Zionism? Okay. We did a very professional, well done. I had a team behind me. I looked like the good guy because I was able to just articulate, after we had a team helping us write this piece, about kind of a quick summary, 9-minute video of how we've seen this issue in the church's eyes, quoting the Magisterium, quoting Vatican II, quoting Benedict XVI, and quoting the whole sacred scripture. So let's just play 3 minutes of this, and then we're going to switch after that into, from Michael's part, kind of like the history of how the Vatican, Israeli state have interacted. Let's play the clip. Play the video. On February 11, 2026, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick announced the removal of Carrie Prejean Bowler from President Donald Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. Carrie Bowler, a Catholic convert and former Miss California USA, sparked an intense debate at the recent commission hearing when she rooted her rejection of Zionism in her Catholic faith, for which she received intense backlash. In the face of these unjust attacks on her position and other Catholics standing up for their faith, Catholics for Catholics has put together an explanation with greater theological precision on the authentic Catholic view of Zionism in the 1948 State of Israel. At the outset, it's important to affirm these 3 points. First and foremost, as Catholics, we articulate Catholic beliefs using the teaching and language of the Catholic Church. We rejoice that Christ left us St. Peter, the apostles, and their successors to teach us the truths of faith and morality. The Church has its own language to define its own beliefs, both of which have been carefully formulated and refined under the guidance of the Holy Spirit for now 2,000 years. That means when we articulate what we believe as Catholics, we will use the language of the Church, not those outside of it. Second, Zionism is a non-Catholic term that is both biblically charged and notoriously ambiguous and abused. The fact of it being biblically charged could not be avoided even by the secular founders of the 1948 State of Israel, who in their own Declaration of Independence framed its founding as part of the realization of the age-old dream, the redemption of Israel. Thus, while some may try to divest the term Zionism of theological implications, it's impossible to do so completely. Third, evaluating Zionism as such therefore touches upon matters of biblical interpretation, the authority for which belongs to the Catholic Church. Since Christ gave this authority to interpret Scripture and infallibly teach in matters of faith and moral to the Catholic Church alone, we as Catholics must always defer to those teachings and the language in which they are formulated when it comes to articulating Catholic beliefs. What that means is this. No one can demand that Catholics use non-Catholic language to explain Catholic belief. This is just as absurd as demanding Jews and other non-Catholics use Catholic language to explain their non-Catholic beliefs. We can use the language of those outside the Church to explain what we reject, but we will always use the language of the Church to explain what we believe. We'll cut it right there. The full video is in the link. I really encourage you to watch that. Again, so well done, well put together by a team here at Catholics for Catholics, just to kind of give articulation on that matter. Michael, quick comments are on that video, what you saw there, and just opinions.
Well, I mean, you're laying a solid foundation for precisely why Catholics are not, first of all, not obliged to in any way support or encourage or endorse the idea that the Jews are owed Israel as a homeland. There's no theological foundation for Catholics to believe that whatsoever. And I think what you're doing is you're establishing a very solid framework and a solid foundation for that.
The point, the kind of the crux of it, one of the main takeaways was, first of all, there's absolute confusion about Zionism, what it actually means, right? And I think there's some of its actual intentional confusion that's used to the advantage of dispensationalists, right? You know, like there are prominent Catholic, podcasters out there who have stated, like, look, if Zionism means simply that Israel has a right to exist, therefore I'm a Zionist, right? And you'll see in the video that we basically come to the conclusion that, yeah, of course Israel has a right to exist on the level of natural law, right? It already exists. Therefore, like every other nation, it has a right to exist. Okay. Right. So don't walk away from this show and say, oh my God, so you say Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Not what we're saying, people. Listen closely. On the basis of natural law, it does. So, but Zionism, if that's all it means, in theory, you could use that. But our conclusion is it's not prudent to use that term because of its biblically charged nature. And also, most importantly, let's not use the language of the secular world to define what we believe as Catholics. Let's use Catholic terminology, natural law, to see the whole framework, right? So I think that's important because it is biblically charged, and there is no theological foundation that they should have their own state in that sense in 2026, right? Natural law, yes, but not there. Anyway, okay. So with that, you watch the whole video, recommend it, send it around to priests. We've got a lot of good reviews also from priests, and there's been I'm going to name 5 bishops, or not name. on my hand that I know have been, and cardinals who've received this video directly to their phones, and they have responded very. They gave it thumbs up, right? What we're doing. So anyway, that's good to hear. So Michael, history. Let's go back though. Okay, where did this movement start? Like what? How did this happen? How did we wake up in 1948? None of us woke up because we weren't alive. But to the fact that a state was created, how did that happen? Take us away.
So it starts really with this guy named Theodore Herzl, Herzl. He lived in the late 1800s. He died in 1904. Herzl is considered the father or the founder of the modern Zionist movement in, let's see, in 1896. So he started writing in 1895 and then published in 1896 a book called The State of the Jews. And in this book, he argued that the Jewish people should leave Europe for Palestine, which he called their historic homeland. The Jews possessed a nationality, he says. All they were missing was a nation and a state of their own. Now, what's interesting, he argues that only through a Jewish state could they avoid anti-Semitism. He expressed the expression of their culture and the practice of their religion without hindrance. That's not entirely true. I mean, traditionally, Jews have existed in every culture on the planet and have practiced their religion in various ways in different places. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't been persecuted, but let's be honest. So have Catholics, so have Christians. It all depends on, as they say, it's all a matter of whose ox is being gored. And let's also be honest, Catholics, even though we've got the Vatican, we don't necessarily have a homeland, as it were. So this idea that there has to be a homeland for this particular religion is not, it can't be separated from the theological foundations that they're attempting to attach to it. So Herzl, he writes
like pause there. I love that point. Just think about this, people, for a second. No other country has an ism next to it. Okay. You know, there's no Mexicanism or Argentinianism or Vaticanism, right? We don't consider you if you go and like shoot a Catholic at a Catholic school, like happened in Minnesota, we don't say you're anti-Vaticanista or whatever. You know, we say, yeah, you have a animosity towards Catholics, obviously, right? In the same way, like if someone does a horrible thing and goes and attacks a synagogue, yes, they're being anti-Semitic. I guess you could use it, right? Or the hatred of Jews, which we always condemn as Catholics, right? But it's nothing to do with their view of the 1948 state of Israel, right? There's got to be a difference. Yes, absolutely. But you were saying, sorry.
So here's something that's very interesting about the publication of this book. It was immediately divisive, and there was this split in the Jewish world, and some of them. And I'll just read to you straight from what I have here in this article. He also encountered bitter opposition from members of the Orthodox community and those seeking to integrate into non-Jewish society.
Interesting.
Yeah. So right off the bat, he met opposition from within his own camp, from within the Jews themselves, and not all of them. In fact, a majority of them at that time were opposed to the theological underpinnings for which Judaism claims Israel, the Holy Land, or
which, funny enough, like, okay, so from the very beginning, 1904, whatever it was, those Orthodox communities were already kind of saying, yeah, like they were opposed to this idea of it's right, which continues to 2026 because Carrie Trojan will see it when she tried last week or 5 days ago to get. She was trying to get one of the rabbis from New York, the voice of rabbi, forget his name, who wanted to provide testimony and say, like, look, we don't want this,
right.
You know, we feel rated as second class Jews because our devotion politically is to America first and not the 1948 state of Israel. Right. That testimony was not allowed by the commission. Okay.
They wouldn't allow her to talk. Yeah,
What's that?
They wouldn't allow her to talk. They kept interrupting her, and they kept changing the topic and moving away from the questions that she was asking. They wouldn't directly address her questions. So yeah, it was a serious
Incredible.
problem right there.
So sorry, I cut. So again, you were saying from the very beginning that was the case with Orthodox.
Right. So it's interesting because then there was this article that was published just after the first Zionist Congress, which took place in 1897. Herzl himself convened this Congress, and the article depicted Jews who opposed Zionism as constituting a despicable type of Jew and has often been described as anti-Semitic. So you've got this this very strange infighting taking place. Now, I want to just kind of quote for you here what The State of the Jews, the book written by Herzl, kind of proposes. The opening says this: the Jewish question persists whether Jews live in appreciable numbers. Wherever it does not exist, it is brought together in with Jewish immigrants. We are naturally drawn into those places where we are not persecuted, and our appearance there gives rise to persecution. This is the case, and will inevitably be so, everywhere, even in highly civilized countries, for instance, France, so long as the Jewish question is not solved on the political level. And then the book concludes with this: therefore, I believe that a wondrous generation of Jews will spring into existence. The Maccabeans will rise again. Let me repeat once more my opening words. The Jews who wish for a state will have it. We will live at last as free men on our own soil and die peacefully in our homes. The world will be freed by our liberty, enriched by our wealth, magnified by our greatness. And whatever we attempt there to accomplish for our own welfare will react powerfully and beneficially for the good of humanity. So this this book, the foundational statement for the existence of the political state of Israel, he gives theological foundations for the idea. He gives certain predictions for what will happen. But it's interesting because as I went through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of newspaper clippings regarding the Vatican's formal positions in relation to Zionism. And everywhere and every time I could find, the Vatican rejected the theological underpinnings for the Jewish state of Israel. And in fact, it was Pope Benedict XV who predicted that if this were to happen, there would be serious catastrophic repercussions
Did he
in the
really?
Middle East and in the world. Yes, he did. So
do you have that quote from Benedict XV?
I think I do, but it's jumbled in this mess of clips that I have, so I'm gonna have to go through them systematically before I can get to it. Let me go to, and I'll have Charles pull this up. Go to the third article, the third clipping that I have here. It's from the American Israelite, February 25th, 1904. And I'm bringing this up first because there is a persistent rumor that Theodore Herzl met with Pope Pius X. Herzl later wrote about it in his diary entry, wherein he said that the Pope told him that he could never support Zionism for Israel's sake. And I don't remember exactly the quote because I didn't have it in the newspaper clippings, but Herzl wrote about it allegedly in his diary, and it gets constantly spread around online that Pope Pius X had discussed this. Now, in this article, it's interesting. The American Israelite says there has been announced that Dr. Theodore Herzl has had an audience with the Pope. If the audience is true, I hope that he has effected something with the Vatican that will be of benefit to the Jews of the world. Just about just about now, when the misguided Limerick priest is rehashing the foul slander that the Jews used the blood of Christians in their Passover ritual, it would be a dramatic silencing of the charge if the Pope would come out and boldly declare the falsity of this childish accusation. It has been said that Pope Pius X is friendly disposed toward the Jews. If this is true, he can show his friendship in no better way than once and for all nailing this foul blood accusation slander. And then it just goes on. But it's interesting. This article does not confirm that the meeting actually took place. It's if it took place. If you go to the 4th page that I have here, this is from January the 30th of 1904. And in the article, it's talking about how the Pope is in poor health, that his health is suffering, it's declining. They think it's declining. And then the Jews, or not the Jews, but the Jesuits start talking about, oh, maybe we need to have a conclave. This is just months, by the way, after Pope Pius X had been elected. So this is a rather interesting piece. But then it goes on. It says, Max Nordau, vice president of the Congress of Zionists, the Rappel's correspondent says, so Max Nordau is the Rappel's correspondent. He says, has denied the report that Dr. Herzl, founder of the Zionist movement, was received by the Pope. Although Dr. Herzl had an audience with the subject of New Zion with King Victor Emmanuel. And then he talks about how long that meeting took place. And then he goes on to what he would hope that Herzl would say to the Pope. But again, you have this denial that the meeting actually took place, which is interesting. I can't confirm that this meeting actually took place. There's no record of it except for what Herzl had in his own personal diary. Now, he died 6 months after he allegedly met with Pope Pius X. So again, there's no verification. The Vatican has never issued a statement indicating that Herzl met with the Pope. And there's been no indication other than what Herzl wrote himself that there was such a meeting or what was said in it, allegedly.
That being said,
yeah, go ahead.
All right. I agree with you there. So there's no Vatican statement on our side saying, yeah, it was confirmed. Okay. This is kind of similar to, in one way, to the famous quote that the headlines ran with it all over the place, that Pope Francis said there's no hell. Okay. Where did that quote come from? Eugenio Scalfari, an Italian journalist, old guy, I think he passed away already. And he was based on conversations that he said, I talked with Pope Francis about this, and this is what he said. He didn't even take notes in the meeting. He came later and then sat down and he just wrote it after the meeting and said, this is what the Pope Francis said. Now, we know that he actually met with Pope Francis, but the Vatican never issued a clarifying statement and said that was wrong, okay? Which created more confusion, right? It was a pontificate of confusion. But this is even worse because there's nothing on the Vatican side. Just this guy's saying what he's saying, right?
Yep. All right. So I want to go to another slide. And I've just rearranged my order, so I don't know which one to tell Charles. Vatican voices opposition. That's the one that I want to look at next. And the reason that I want to point out this article, this is from 1922. What the Vatican is voicing opposition to is a British mandate over Palestine. The idea that the British, because they actually controlled Palestine at that time, that the British would start carving out a place for the Jews to settle, and that they would,
But Michael, before you go to that next time period, next pontificate, that pontificate's opinion,
1922, yeah.
Why does it matter if the meeting actually happened between Herzl and Pius X? Why?
Well,
because maybe you should read what was said. I don't know if you have that quote.
I don't have the quote ready.
Pull up in a second. Get that up on the screen, because it's actually kind of plausible that the meeting had, because it shows the paragraph, the quote from Cardinal Raphael Maridavel, okay, who was the Secretary of State. And that kind of like syncs with what would have happened. They would have met with the Secretary of State first, would have got a quote from him, and then he's got a quote from Pius X. Like what those two men said, I guess potentially is plausible. So I don't know if you have a comment.
I have the quote here now.
And say what you think about that. Let's just assume it was true or we're not sure. Like, why does it matter if this meeting really happened or not?
So let's read the quote and then we can determine the import of it. Allegedly, let's see. While the king showed interest in the Zionist movement and even revealed that one of his ancestors was a co-conspirator of the false Messiah, the audience with Pope Pius X does not gain his support. So the Pope tells Herzl, and this is the quote. This is what Herzl recorded in his own diary. We cannot give approval to this movement. We cannot prevent the Jews from going to Jerusalem, but we could never sanction it. The earth of Jerusalem, if it was not always holy, has been made holy by the life of Jesus Christ. I, as head of the church, cannot possibly say otherwise. The Jews have not recognized our Lord. We therefore cannot recognize the Jewish people. Now, I always try to go directly to the source whenever I see a quote like this, because it's extremely important to authenticate anything as important as a quote like this. I don't necessarily doubt that the Pope said something like that to Herzl, but because I can't confirm it, I don't rely on it, and I don't think anybody else should. Is it plausible? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely in line with all of the other articles that I'm finding with relation to the Vatican's disposition towards Zionism. But because I can't confirm this, and because the only person reporting those particular words is Theodor Herzl, I don't know. Now, he's writing that the Pope said something that was actually against his own movement. So it's it's plausible.
It builds credibility, man. For also what you're going to say further on. Like we're just trying to look at the evidence that's actually out there that we can confirm. Say yes, we can go with this, and this is what the Vatican said. So hats off to us for like shooting down one of our best supports, because we don't want to have credibility to that, right? And there's a translation issue, right? The guy was German or Austrian, right? So did he actually speak Italian? Did he understand it? Like, how was the translation? How did that play out, right? So if the meeting happened. So well said.
So that it's very important for our own credibility not to rely on secondhand sources. And this would be a secondhand source. Pope told him this, he reported it in his own diary. That's secondhand. That because the Pope didn't say it and write it down himself. It was something that was reported by somebody that this is what he was told. So going back to your Scalfari argument, that's why this is important. Scalfari didn't take notes when he was meeting with Pope Francis, and he came out and he would simply, well, the Pope told me this and the Pope told me that, and he would quote the Pope. But because he wasn't taking notes at the time, and I mean, the man was of advanced age anyway, there's a question about the validity of what he was saying. Does it mean that he's wrong? Not necessarily, but we shouldn't rely on secondhand reports like this. We just shouldn't. It's not a good practice. So, moving on to the Vatican Voices opposition article. This is from 1922. So we're talking just like 18 years after the alleged meeting between Herzl and Pope Pius X. And this would be 2 popes later, because Pope Pius X died in, 1912 or 1913?
1914, during
1914.
At the start of World War I.
Yep. And Pope Benedict XV assumed the throne. And then after he died, Pope Pius I. So this would be during the pontificate of Pope Pius I. The article says this: hostility to the British mandate over Palestine is due primarily to the fact that the rights of the Christian.
Pius XI.
What did I say?
First.
Oh, no, I meant the 11th. Multiply by 10. Hostility to the British mandate over Palestine is due primarily to the fact that the rights of the Christians are endangered by Zionist aggression. This is still a problem. This is still a thing. This is still an issue. And Jason Jones, our friend Jason Jones, has reported that, yes, there are Zionists who are doing things that are preventing Christians from going to the holy sites. They are showing aggression and antagonism towards pilgrims visiting the Holy Land. So it's still an ongoing problem, but this was voiced as a concern in 1922. The British authorities have practically permitted the Zionist organization to usurp control of the Holy Land, while the rights of the Christians and Arabs are being flagrantly violated. The British government's attitude has prompted the Vatican to raise objections to the Palestine Mandate before the Council of the League of Nations. The Vatican, however, is not averse in opposing, and then it gets kind of dark here and I can't read it, but it says that it's not averse to standing in opposition to extreme Zionists. Of all the criticism that has arisen against the schemes for a Zionist dominion in Palestine, nothing has equaled the directness in the comments of Dr. McInnes. Goes on, but then there's a statement here from, let's see, there's a, okay, no, there's no other statement in this one regarding the Vatican other than that initial statement that they stood in opposition and they were raising objections. The next article comes from August 13th, 1922.
Just comment on that. That for me is obviously the Pius the 10th interview is nothing, right? Because we don't know if it's happened, but that right there is so profound. That's Benedict the 15th. Okay. That somehow, even at a very early stage in 1922, is that when he wrote this? So it was after World War I, well after the First World War. He already sensed and knew in those early underpinnings that there would be that aggression towards Christians in the Holy Land. And it's funny you bring up Jason Jones. I literally talked to Jason an hour ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, he just launched a massive campaign because Bethlehem, is under severe kind of attack. The way they do is they just increase the settlements and continue to make life extremely difficult for the Christians living there. I think they used to have 45 square miles. Now they've been reduced down to 7 square miles. That's Christian controlled. And there's an absurd amount of IDF checkpoints, 145 checkpoints. I saw that. So MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, was just there, drawing attention to that too last couple of days. So what he saw in 1922, over 100 years ago, was the same, and Benedict the 15th, he knows what he's talking about too. This is the guy who, the Pope, who really suffered through the First World War and attempted on several times to end the war and to get peace. Yeah. But if I remember correctly, it was the Great Britain who was forget it, unconditional surrender. Let's keep killing till they they wave the white flag. So providential that he would make this statement. But yeah, please, great find, Michael, on that.
Well, it gets even more interesting because the Sunday Standard and various other places carried this article from August 13th of 1922. Again, this is the pontificate of Pius XI. There's a portion of this article, and it's a rather lengthy article, but there's a portion that starts with the subhead, Britain balked by Vatican. And it says British efforts to bring Italy to her side. So this is important because what it establishes is the geopolitical politicking that's taking place with regard to this very specific, and at the time, a very small but very loud movement. So here we have British efforts to bring Italy to her side in an attempt to restrain French plans for domination of the European continent have been balked by the opposition of the Catholic Church to British policies in Palestine and elsewhere in the Near East. The Vatican has taken a strong position against control of the holy place by either Jews or Protestants, and no Italian minister can long exist which will support Britain so long as she maintains her present position. So it's fascinating getting into the history here and looking back at what was actually taking place just from a geopolitical standpoint, and that Britain was trying to court favor with the Italians, and Britain and Italy never really got along. They don't really like each other, but Britain was courting the favor of the Italians for their plan for Palestine, And Italy was having a hard time giving any kind of support to Britain simply because the Vatican was saying, no, we don't support this. But then the article goes on to give what the Catholic position is. It says in the subhead, Position of the Catholics, such a radical antagonism threatening to flare up at any moment all through the Arab territories would be serious enough for Britain in her present strained circumstances and with her home troubles. But the situation has had far wider implications. The Arabs, more than the Turks, have an influence on all Mohammedan opinion, and they can make trouble in India, Persia, Afghanistan, and Egypt. Even more serious, however, so more serious than the Arab problem, even more serious, however, is the clash with the Catholic power. The Vatican has made known, formally and informally, that it will not give its assent to the conditions of the mandate which the British have been trying to put through the League of Nations. It is instead, it is insisted that Rome shall be fully recognized in the guardianship of the holy places, and grave clashes are certain before the matter is settled to the satisfaction of the Pope. So here we have right there Pope Pius XI establishing that there are going to be serious clashes if the holy places are given guardianship to anyone other than the Catholic Church. Already these differences have interfered seriously with the plans of the British government for the reorganization of Europe. An essential element in them is the cooperation of Italy. So then it goes on, and then the article just kind of ends with this. Thus, the Vatican has a veto on the foreign relations of Italy. It can be predicted with safety that the Church will not consent to a close working arrangement between Rome and London unless Britain decides to give up a great deal it now has of lands and privileges in the Near East, especially in Palestine. And the last thing I want to share here, it's an article from the American Israelite from July 13th, 1922. And this article, it's a lengthy article, and it complains bitterly about how the Vatican has been stymieing any effort to put forward the Zionist notions and standing against Zionist ideologies that would give Palestine over to the Jews for their own holy land. And in it, they make a reference to a Monsignor Barlasina, okay, Monsignor Barlasina, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem. And it's a short clip that I have here from this larger article, but this is really very interesting. Says, in an address delivered in the Holy City early in June, he attacked Zionism by declaring that the interests of the Catholic Church were identical with those of the Arab population. In regard to the delegation of Arabs in London sent to protest against the mandate, he affirmed that all the native population was with it, and added this, quote, "The very stones are crying out for vengeance. The Catholic world must fight against the profanation of the Holy Land by the Zionists. It must declare a holy war against Zionism." There is no doubt, therefore, that the Vatican is seriously opposed to the Palestine Mandate and has even given expression to that opposition in ways that are not generally known. And actually, I said that that was going to be my last one. No, I want to jump to the one from 1985. This is also from a writer for the New York Times, E.J. Dion, republished in the Houston Chronicle. The title is "Vatican Draws Jewish Rebuke." Again, this is from 1985, so well after the Second Vatican Council. All right. And what it establishes towards the end of the article, and you can see it in the highlight here, on Israel, the Vatican statement said Christians are, quote, "invited to understand this religious attachment," end quote, to the state. It added, quote, "the existence of the state of Israel and its political opinions should be envisaged not in a perspective which is itself religious, but in their reference to the common principles of the international law, which is precisely what, John, what you said in your public statement the other day. And then this last quote here, the committee's statement said that in this passage, quote, modern Israel is emptied of any possible religious significance for Christians, and that, quote, nothing is said about Israel's right to exist or the justice of her cause. So what the Jews are complaining about there is they recognized very quickly and very readily that the Vatican statement emptied the theological Zionist underpinnings for their control of Israel. And the Vatican has never recognized that the Jews have a right to rule Israel. Never recognized this.
Theological right.
The theological right, yeah.
Theological right. Hold that document right there. Look at the headline, because I think that's part of the problem. It's weaponized ambiguity. Okay, it's Vatican draws from who? Rebuke from who? The Jews. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's precise, and I think it's mental. That's done on purpose, because as you showed historically from 1922 onwards to 2026, this is not a battle between Catholics and Jews or Protestants and Jews. This is a battle between a politically motivated group, which by and large, a lot of times, although they kind of say they have a divine right, a lot of times they're actually atheistic Jews. Okay. Some of the strongest proponents of Zionism who say there's a biblical right for this land are actually will also come back and tell you that I'm an atheistic Jew, whatever that actually means. Right. So I think what's we have to get away from language precision. It's not okay. Vatican document draws rebuke from not the Jews, because again, there's many Jews who actually agree this. I'd love to see the polling actually on how many Jews around the world are actually in the full sense of the word Zionist, in sense of like the biblical right, or they have like a mandate to support Israel over their home country. Right. I'm told by Europeans, and I think this is the case, like here in the States, it's on steroids. This whole Israel, land for the state. You go there in Europe, and it's not as strong nearly at all among the Jewish populations there. So, I think we have to because they hammer that. You'll see at the end with the Mark Levin clip against Catholics for Catholics and Dan Patrick trying to put us in this like you're just a bunch of anti-Semites. No, guys, come on, walk and chew gum. Okay, it's it's seriously, and I think that partly maybe not them, but many others do it on purpose because it confuses people. Mm-hmm. We are not anti. We have no hatred of the Jewish people.
Right. So what they do is they conflate terms.
On purpose.
On purpose. Yeah, absolutely. They're conflating the term anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, and that was actually played out in the whole debate back and forth with Carrie Prejean-Bowler and the whole panel that she was arguing with. They were arguing about whether they what it meant to be anti-Zionist or anti-Semite, and do the two terms conflate? And the answer that they gave was, well, pretty much yes. And I sent this over to our producer here. It's the fundamental agreement between the Holy See and the State of Israel from 1993. And he can put it up on the board. I'm not going to read from it, but I will simply say this, that this fundamental agreement between the Holy See and the State of Israel is all about everything that the Vatican was concerned with back in 1922, back in 1902, okay, or 04 rather. The whole concern was that the pilgrims in the Catholic Church have to have their control over the holy sites of Israel, and that pilgrims must be allowed and protected to go to these sites, to venerate at these sites, to practice their faith at these sites. And so what the whole agreement here is all about is Israel basically giving concessions over to the Vatican, saying, yes, we agree to this, we agree to this, we agree to this, and we will allow for the pilgrims and the Catholics to engage in all of these practices of their faith. it makes oblique references to, okay, yeah, we as the Vatican and Catholics, we don't support any kind of anti-Semitism. We don't support any kind of hatred towards the Jews, racism, that kind of thing. We're all about religious tolerance. Okay. But that does not in any way substantiate or support the idea that Jews have a theological right to rule the Holy Land. Not in any way, shape, or form. So people need to stop conflating this idea that supporting Israel, or even just simply stating that Israel as a nation state has a right to exist. You can't conflate that with the theological underpinning saying that the Jews have a divine mandate from God to rule Israel. You can't conflate those two, and the Vatican has never, ever, ever supported that notion.
Theological problem, massive political implications. You have some of the most renowned senators, Senator Ted Cruz, the famous interview with Tucker Carlson. I mean, it's basically, he literally said, like, I came to Congress to support Israel, right? And he's, that famous interchange where, like, yeah, the Bible has always taught me. I learned in Sunday school. The Bible has taught me that you bless Israel, then you will be blessed, right? Of course, that is a reference to the Catholic Church. We're the new Israel, right? So the problem is today is we see so many of our politicians have massive amounts of funding from AIPAC, which is essentially an Israeli lobby. Okay. They do. I mean, up to President Trump. I'm so grateful for President Trump. We got to keep praying for him and everything he's got. I can't imagine his job, but there's the reality too of, and I also don't agree with everything he's done or not done. We're vocal on that too. But the biggest donation that he received was, and this is backing up a stat, it's like 94% of the past elections, the one who wins is the one that raises the most amount of money. Okay. So money really does impact who wins the higher offices. So where was his biggest donation from? By far, it's from Mary Madelson, right? One of the massive Jewish donors, right? Trump himself said when he was in Tel Aviv, whether it was in Tel Aviv or here in the States, where they had that big press conference, and he looked at the crowd and referenced Miriam and just said, hey, yeah, Miriam gave me that big donation. Sometimes I wonder which country she loves more, or she often tells me I love Israel more than America. Again, it's not like critiquing people, but policies. Okay. So this has an effect, and that is put on us, the American voter, the American Christian, the American Catholic, that do this, support these politicians because your Bible tells you to do that. So Michael and I we're Catholic politics from Catholic lens, trying to give light into this, about separate those issues, right? Anyway, it's
even Nostra Aetate, whom the moderns really love to quote.
Vatican II document on ecumenism for listeners.
So they love to quote it as if this is the document that says that, we support the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, etc. Even Nostra Aetate says, and this is a direct quote, the church is the new people of God.
Right.
Nostra Aetate says that.
Lumen Gentium follow also says that it's the new Israel. So that's also back into documents. It's and here's a question people might say, well, because again, we said at the beginning of this, there are some people out there, prominent Catholics, who say you can use the term Zionism just because if you're just meaning that it has a right to exist, therefore you can be on a level of natural law, then you can be a Zionist. Okay, well, technically, yeah. But as we framed an argument, link in the comments below, people, thousands have viewed it already, is that's bad. You should not. It's imprudent to actually use that term because of its theological charged nature of it, okay? Because as the 1948 State of Israel's own Declaration of Independence, okay, they were very clear. When they founded that State of Israel, they were not founding it on the point of just natural law alone. We have a natural right. That's what we meant. They understood the theological implications of this. From their own Declaration of Independence, direct quote, is Zionism is a non-Catholic term that is both biblically charged and notoriously abused. The fact of its being biblically charged could not be avoided even by the secular founders of the 1948 State of Israel, who in their declaration framed its founding as part of the, quote, realization of the age-old dream the redemption of Israel. Okay, so thus, while some may try to divest the term Zionism of theological implications, it's impossible to do completely, and therefore should be avoided for a Catholic. That's the case. The any more just kind of like comments about this and how we're seeing this today?
Well, I'm not entirely sure what else needs to be said.
I think for deeper historical analysis, I would be interested in a later show would be to better understand the situation. I want to learn more about what was it like early 1900s, the relationship of Christians, if the Brits were ruling it back then, pre-World War I, how was that going on? How was the treatment going on? How was the Muslim-Christian interactions, or if Jews ever living there? How did that all play?
The funny thing is that the articles that I've seen indicate that the Muslims and the Vatican actually had a fairly cozy relationship at the time. That it was the Zionist Jews that were starting to settle in Palestine that were causing a lot of problems. But at the time, the Patriarch of Jerusalem said he would say, they leave us alone, we leave them alone. They allow us to visit the holy sites, and we basically do our thing. And then they went on to say that it was the Zionists who were causing problems. So it's very interesting to consider the strange bedfellows, that the Catholics would actually have an amicable relationship with the Muslims in the territory at the time. It is fascinating, but that seems to be what the case was.
And your typical just a very unintelligent comment. I think it's used a lot on purpose all the time by the Zionist propaganda, understood properly, is you're just friends with Muslim, or Tucker is getting money from Qatar or whatever, which is absolutely absurd. I mean, there's no bigger enemy to Islam than the Catholic Church. We've been fighting them literally like swords and shields since they started killing people across Northern Africa, right, in the 600s.
Crying out loud, I named my organization after the defeat of the Muslims by the Catholics.
They're 1571 in Lepanto. It's due, exactly. So there's one person that should be exempt from that criticism. I hope it's you. Because if not, then we're all screwed. But like, here's the deal. I'll say it again for those who just need to hear it again because it's the truth. Islam is incompatible with Western civilization. It's incompatible with Christianity. It's incompatible with Catholicism. Okay, it does not work. Okay, it does not work in America. Okay, the Sharia law. Okay, that's just a fact. That was like one of his like last big things he was really getting big on. Charlie Kirk. He understood. He saw the danger of it. So we're the first to say that. Okay, but historically, it's also good to see like how did that actually play out, because there's obviously different tenets of Muslim or Islam, right? Some are much more aggressive, right?
Sure.
I guess the assumption is always that our Christian holy sites are always better in Israeli-controlled places. I don't know if that's necessarily true. In fact, I've seen it kind of like firsthand. Like I've been to Ephesus, Turkey. You ever go there? Have you been to the Holy Land ever, Michael, by chance?
No, I've never been to the Holy Land.
I've been to Holy Land, and I've also been to Turkey a couple times. But Turkey is where I
went to Turkey.
What's that?
I went to Turkey. Oh yeah, that's where Mount Ararat is.
That's right. In your famous quote we talked about last week, we offered mass the first time since Noah left the ark there. But Turkey, I saw Ephesus where St. Paul spent like 2-3 years of his ministry, and also where it's rumored, a lot of historical evidence for that. Actually, we talked about that on a different show. That was my Noah's Ark adventure, by the way. Was Ephesus, where Mary, the Blessed Mother, spent the last years of her life, right before she was taken up into heaven. And they have the house there, which again, I think there's extremely good historical evidence for that house being that. And funny enough, same time period, Pius X, actually, who maybe met with Theodore Herzl in like 1904, around the same year, actually removed, people don't know this, he removed the indulgence that you get from visiting the tomb of Mary, or what's it called? The Church of the Assumption or Domitian, I think it is in Jerusalem. He removed that indulgence from Jerusalem and he put it over in Ephesus, Turkey. The church never declared scientifically to believe as the house of Mary, but personally, like private opinion as Pope, he thought that was actually Mary's house. I digress. The point is, going there, visiting Mary's house that I believe it's Mary's house, it's Muslim controlled, okay? And it was, they have reverence for Mary, they have reverence for Christ, in some ways the prophet, but there was no issue. They loved seeing us go there, right? So I know it's not the case everywhere. Obviously, ISIS destroyed so many churches around the country. So I'm not saying by and large, but I think we just have to be a little bit more nuanced in how we look at, Israel control way better than Muslim control. Not always across the board. So that's all.
Yeah.
It's okay. So anyway, for later, I'd love to know more the situation early on, how it was actually between the Brits and the Christians. And then also, here's the other thing for later dialogue or discussion. What exactly is the relationship from the very beginning between the Zionist and God? Because I'm like mixed messages. Like on one hand, they're like secular atheist, but on the other hand, they're kind of like affixing themselves to biblical principles for this right on the thing. Sounds like a dumb question, I think, but again, my point is you have some of the biggest Zionists like Larry Ellison, right? Who just bought, if you're on TikTok, he just bought that, newsflash, bought it in November. Okay. Larry Ellison was, TikTok was owned by the CCP or whatever it was. Trump saved it. Okay. And Zionist billionaire Larry Ellison buys it. He's also the biggest funder of the IDF. Okay. So, but on his page, his own biography, he's like, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheistic Jew. So,
yeah,
it's kind of like a paradox. Like, so forgive me if that question has an obvious answer, but what exactly Theodore Herzl,
right?
Like, was he a believer? Was he a strong believer in God, the one God? I don't know, but maybe you do.
Well, I mean, this goes back to the question of which Jews are we talking about? When you're talking about the Jews ruling Israel, are you talking about the ones that believe that we're still waiting for the Messiah? Or are you talking about the humanistic Jews who believe that the Messiah has already come and it's just the love between us as Jews? Or, it all depends. It all depends on who you're talking about. And it's interesting to me how the entire situation has developed as both a religious issue and a political one at the same time. And they really can't be separated. You can try and separate the two, but it's not really possible because
it's designed not to be separated. That's the thing, because that's how they get so many Christians in this country bowing financially and at the voting booth for that. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why there's so often opposition. That's why so many bots on our feed, or when we announce that we're giving an award to Carrie Prejean, like, because they know you split this thing open and put the terms of where they're at and call them out and name it.
Right.
That's the worst nightmare.
Well, and a lot of the problem that we're facing, why should the Catholic Church be involved in the geopolitical situation? It actually shouldn't be in one particular sense. And that is that the mission of the church is the salvation of souls. That's why she exists. Her purpose is to draw souls to Christ, to go out and to evangelize, to baptize all nations in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. So what the Catholic Church should be focused on are evangelistic efforts to draw the Jews into the church, to draw the Muslims into the church, to draw the Protestants into the church, to go out and baptize the pagans who are in India and elsewhere, to draw everybody into the Catholic faith. That is what the mission of the Catholic Church is. To get involved in the geopolitics means that you have to give concessions on a religious level if you're going to start acknowledging these as theocracies. And to say that a theocratic right that belongs to the Jews to rule Israel is something that we now have to acknowledge in order to be involved even in just the political conversation. The same thing is true for the Muslims. The same thing is true for Hindus that rule various parts of South Asia. So you can't be involved in the geopolitics while ignoring the religious aspect and still maintain your mission for the evangelization of souls. You can't do all of those things at the same time, and it's a serious, serious problem.
Yeah, it's like saying, if people in Turkey, the Muslims who rule Turkey, it's a Muslim country, were to say, like, we have a biblical right to have this country, and we hope that you recognize it. Like, what? No, you don't. You have a natural right because you already exist, but biblical right, no, forget it. No way. Right? So, well said. Should we get into the fireworks here?
You mean we already haven't?
This is so important. It's such an important topic and conversation. But man, there's been great comments on here too, whether on X and YouTube that I'm following too. Okay, so here's the deal, everybody. Carrie Prejean, we actually covered this week because it broke right before our show. Miss America, she's on the Religious Liberty Commission. Okay, that's a commission set up by President Trump, and which it's done so much good already. It has different hearings, okay, as part of their mandate from the president, led by Dan Patrick, who is a Baptist, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. And then you have the chairman, or underneath it, or secretary, is Mary Margaret Bush, who's a Catholic, and it has several Catholic bishops on there. Okay, Cardinal Dolan, Bishop Barron are the two like members, and then advisors who are part of it, like lower level, are Archbishop Corleone, Bishop Kevin Rhodes, and Bishop Thomas Paprocki. Okay, so it's stacked with Catholic, and Ryan Anderson, and also there's a priest on there, stacked with Catholics. Okay, so the hearing broke up about a week ago, and you may have seen the news. Kerry basically was the hearing was about anti-Semitism, okay? Mm-hmm. And of course, again, for the bots out there, for the people who are just maybe really at this level, like, no, we are not. We condemn all anti-Semitism. Hatred of Jews is wrong. We follow Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for everybody, okay? Of course, all right? That being said, the whole issue just came up right now where we just said this false marriage between biblical theology and the political modern state of Israel. And it's Carrie Prejean, a recent convert, in her best of her ability, fought back against that, pushed that, held the line, declared she was a Catholic, okay, and said, no, I can't stand for political Zionism as you are trying to make it out to be. And what happened? Shortly after 2 days, 28 hours later, boom. The whole, like, first of all, Catholic Inc. came down on her. So Ryan Anderson, who I actually know Ryan, and he's done so much good, and he's argued some great cases for the Supreme Court. He was against her. The priest on the panel was against her. And up to this moment, the bishops have been completely silent and have stood by while they removed her. She's gone. She's out. So we decided, upon consultation with a lot of very smart people and wise, to give her an award. So at our Catholic Prayer for America event coming up in 4 weeks, March 19th in Washington, which again, this is going to be, it's already a viral event for several reasons. Okay. It's on the 250th anniversary of the country the same year. And we invite you to consider attending, really, if you can. This is going to be a powerful moment. We got some great speakers. We'll get the whole slot of speakers on the screen so people can see that. Carrie's going to get an award, okay? We're giving an award, one of our Catholic Champion Awards. We give out several. And why Catholic Champion? Why do we call it Catholic Champion? Because Our Lady of Champion, Wisconsin, Mary's message there, only proved apparition was teach the children the faith, okay? That's at the end of the day, like Michael said, we're Catholics. We care about salvation of souls. That should be our focus, okay? She was trying to defend her faith best for her ability, okay? So we're giving that girl an award. She deserves it, okay? Well, somebody didn't like it, okay? In fact, very powerful people did not like it, okay? And the debate continues. And I was informed that we were brought up on the show with Mark Levin, who's a very big radio program, potentially one of the biggest in the country, and Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Dan Patrick. We're talking about CforC. Let's play the clip and get a comment from Michael.
And for a reason, and she's now dismissed. And by the way, I want to say something when she said my Catholic faith. She just converted to Catholicism. She said that in the meeting. But her Catholicism is with a group called Catholics for Catholics. And get this, Mark. On Saturday, Catholics for Catholics announced they're giving her the Courageous Champion Award.
Great.
But I found out because Ryan Anderson, who's on our committee, who's Catholic, and the priest who was there, Cardinal Dolan wasn't there that particular day, but they refuted everything she said. But Catholics for Catholics is not recognized by the church. It's not recognized by the bishops. It's a fringe group. It's Candace Owens. It's other people who are in this little cabal with all these conspiracy theories, and this attack on the Jews, and I'm going to call them out, but in my heart, I know where America is, and we stand with Israel, and we stand with the Jewish people in this country.
Just a quick message for Lieutenant Dan Patrick and Mark Levin. First of all, thank you for leading such an important commission on religious liberty, which America needs now more than ever. Secondly, yes, we are giving the Catholic Champion Award to Carrie Prejean at the Catholic Prayer for America Gala, March 19th in Washington, D.C. Why? Because that woman stood up for her Catholic faith. We are Catholics for Catholics, and we back those who stand up for their faith in the public square. You can see our full explanation of just how she did that in the link below. God bless you all, and thank you for allowing us to have this discussion so needed on religious liberty. In case you were doubting, with the pressure, don't worry, we're not backing down, okay? Because I guess, like, number one, the amount of people that have written to us from around the country and world who are just thinking that we're backing this. Again, Carrie did it. Maybe she could have been more precise in her language. Of course, 100%. Like, you put a girl on the spot, new convert, she's going to try her best, okay? That's why we kind of formulate exactly what the Catholic stance is to kind of frame that. But no, we're not backing down. So comments on that, Michael?
No, obviously what Dan Patrick was saying, he had no idea what Catholics for Catholics was. He tried to make it out as if it was Candace Owens and a bunch of conspiracy theorists, which I find laughable. But so he has no clue what Catholics for Catholics is. He tries to paint with a broad brush, which, surprise, that's what they all do. They paint with a massively broad brush, and they
right.
just try and dismiss you as conspiracy theorists and brush you under the rug. That's how people like him operate. Now, what he's leading, the Commission on Religious Liberty, you're right. It's important to have a conversation about this kind of stuff. But if you're going to lead a commission on that kind of thing and then, broad brush and sweep under the rug a group of people who are Catholics, who are bringing to the attention of the world that there is a real problem going on with a particular movement and that there are theological disputes that have to be hashed out, that you can't live an indifferent world in this realm under the auspices of religious liberty. We can't be indifferent. We can't say, well, you can believe what you believe and then move on. You can say, we'll allow you to practice your faith, but we have an obligation to reach out and to say, you should know the truth. And we have the truth. We will give you the truth. We want to give you the truth. That's how Catholics operate. But for Dan Catholic or Dan, whatever his name, Patrick.
Dan Baptist. He's not Catholic.
Yeah. With the last name Patrick, it seems like he left with the snakes.
But he says later in the clip, we didn't show this, it's actually his wife's Catholic. And his kids are, he said they're Catholic, but they felt kind of like falling away. It's kind of how he frames it. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, again, the problem is indifferentism in this regard and the dismissiveness of the concerns that Catholics have for this situation. It's a very serious problem and it needs to be discussed. And people like Dan Patrick would just rather the question go away, and we start with the predicated decision to allow for Israel to exist as a Jewish state because of the theological underpinnings that they express for it. And we can't give that concession. And by the very nature of what he's doing, he's now oppressing Catholics who are holding this position.
It's wrong. It's not right. And it's definitely not American, because Catholics represent a major part of this country, right? And it's just truth. But I think what's most hurts us, I know it hurts Carrie, is there's two groups that hurt that, there's the Dan Patrick don't understand and kick her off, but it's two groups that are Catholics that are kind of, I understand, causing pain. Number one, it's those just objectively don't agree with her as a Catholic, and they're just prominent. And that's why we try to do a very respectful, intellectual counter argument to what they were saying, Ryan Anderson, the priests, and others out there, right? To make an argument that she was holding the Catholic belief. That's one group. The second group, though, are those who are privately messaging her as Catholics and saying, I agree with what you said. You're right. And she's like, thank you. But why don't you speak up, right? So this happens not just on this issue, but on a ton of others. We take stands for different things, and people privately message you, but I know they can't always do it because they're in a nuanced position. Okay, I get that. But we need more public support, because if we don't push back on whether it's this issue or other ones, or You know, we're losing the culture. We totally are, right?
Right.
But okay, wrapping up. This has been an incredible show. I'm tempted to do the Charlie Kirk thing, but maybe we'll save that for like a later thing. There's so much to comment on what he said there. Probably should save that. That's just opening up like
this conversation is not going away.
Conversation is not going away. So
much to my chagrin.
yeah, exactly. We should wrap this up. I want to get into next week too about Vatican's decision about this to opt out of the Board of Peace. That's a good thing to talk about. Why, pros and cons of that. Another news: Elon Musk apparently just tweeted out earlier this morning, I agree with the teachings of Jesus. Okay, that's cool. That's good. You know, time of Lent. We also posted on our X. I took this from a Patriotic X account that we reposted that we've determined. I'll leave you with this. We know who the patron saint of X should be. Michael, who should it be? Unless you saw our X, you will know this.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Let's throw it on the screen. Saint Andrew was crucified on an X.
Aha.
Therefore, that wasn't my idea, but I thought it was a good idea. So we're behind that initiative. Saint Andrew should be the patron saint. We need a patron there because so if there's no
Saint Andrew, who was the one responsible for introducing Peter to Christ, and in fact, he's known for introducing all the important people to whom they need to be. So, kind of an interesting connection there to X, where people meet.
Yeah, love it. There you go. Love it. So, hey, the case is being made. We'll see if Pope Leo will arrange for that initiative. But this is so yeah. Lent starts today, everyone. Again, reminders: we got Catholic Prayer for America coming up. It's again, if you haven't seen this, we have made available 50 free spots for priests. We are eating the cost for that, okay? And we want our priests there. If it's about prayer, you cannot understand Catholic prayer without the priesthood of Jesus Christ there, the ministerial form, right? We want those men there with us. So that's it. We'll be praying for you in this Lent. Keep up the great work, and we will see you next time, same place. God bless you all, and fight on.